to be honest, what happens right now is something nobody seen before. If I'm telling you every single package, I'm going to charge $50. You cannot do any business over there. It's just killing the entire e-commerce ecosystem.
Any suggestions, advices you can give them based on your experience in the past and what you're observing now?
Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. This is Frost. Today we're going to talk about a very heavy topic regarding tariffs and all the changes it has brought to the retail and e-commerce online.
Hi everyone, this is Jun. Welcome to the show. And today we actually have a guest who have a lot of experience dealing with tariffs and trades across the ocean. Spent a lot of time dealing with this when last time it happened. So welcome to the show, Zoil. Do you want to spend some time introduce yourself first?
Sure. Thanks, Frost. Thanks, Jun. So this is Zoil here. I was head of self-inventory at Wish.com 6-7 years back. That's Trump's first term, and he's introducing this first round tariff war with China, and also basically he's saying, hey, the China is taking advantages of us by many ways. So he's trying to fight with China about that. And I was doing the cross-border trading e-commerce at Wish.com. So that's when I first experienced this tough situation. But to be honest, like what happens right now is something nobody seen before. And it's even way worse than what was in his first term.
What's different this time?
So I think two things. One, this time the increase percentage is extremely high. And you can see it covers almost everything, all the categories, and they had much round of increase. At the very beginning, just some base increase, then special increase for fentanyl, then increase across the world for everyone. Then because China retaliated, then there's additional increase. So if you look at what increased, it's been 4 or 5 times increase over there. Everything added up to 145%. So that's extremely high. Two, like Trump is adding tariff to all the countries. So what we observed or what we feel we can do previously is, hey, if you are doing tariff war with China, let's go Vietnam, let's go Malaysia, let's go Indonesia, let's go Thailand, Bangladesh, even Mexico. We can go any other countries. And actually, that's what happened. A lot of Chinese manufacturers start to invest in Southeast Asia and Mexico, those countries, buy land, build a factory, and start to produce stuff over there. Like, I would say everybody.
But that kind of investment, if that has been sustaining, would have been the payoff right now, right? Because now...
if there's no tariff for other countries.
But if Trump is adding tariff for every country,
you see the Vietnam is actually having even higher tariff than China sometimes, or Thailand, right? So that doesn't make sense. So
suddenly everything you do, everything you tried in the past
8 years doesn't work,
right? But of course, right now, this temporary
90 days pause for other countries. Trump is focusing on
dealing with China, but still, who knows what happened after 90 days? You don't know what's the
tariff level after 90 days in Vietnam, in
Thailand, and other countries, or even Mexico. So it's a dynamic
situation. We need to monitor it closely. So that's the second thing. This time is different. It's a tariff for everyone.
And the third thing, that's probably
most important thing for a lot of e-commerce players like Shein, Temu, even Amazon,
Walmart, all those marketplaces,
is this cancellation of de minimis. It used to be the level used to be $800. So if you buy something, the value is lower than $800, and the seller will just ship it to you from, let's say, from China, use like the mail system. So you don't need to pay any tariff. It's just like a letter you mail to someone, and nothing will happen in between. Of course, they will check, but there's no tariff. And this time, this de minimis will be canceled, I think, on May 2nd. So then everything you buy, even in Amazon or Walmart or any other e-commerce platform, as long as it's from outside of the US, even just the $5, you need to pay tariff. Nobody knows what will happen. I don't know how many of the customers is willing to pay tariff to purchase a $5 stuff from online. I also don't know what's the reactions the seller will have, because the volume is huge. Just think about the transaction volume between China and the US. It's huge. I even don't know how custom can handle this tariff thing. Like it's a huge amount of workload they need to do. They cannot check everything. It's impossible. We will see. It's the first time in the history. It's very you feel you are in the history, to be honest, just in a bad way.
I'm asking just for our listeners, Zoil, do you mind just like telling us a little bit more about these 800 exemptions in general for drop shipping versus the traditional non-drop shipping importing?
Yes. So whenever we are talking about importing stuff from outside the US, people may thinking about there's a big ocean ship with containers, right? Everything is in that container, and we get things into custom. Then container by container, the customer will check what's in there and what's the declared value and what's the tariff they should pay. That's happening. Of course, that's happening. And that's a normal trade that happens between any countries. And of course, when you raise the tariff, you need to pay more per container. That's for sure. That's there. I believe most of the audience understand that part. But for this small package on this de minimis, it's slightly different. It's through the mail system, the USPS, let's say. China is in China Post. So it has this exemption if your value is lower than $800, right? So you don't need to pay tariff. You just declare what's in there, and it will just flow into the US without paying any tariff. So that's actually the majority of channel or the e-commerce platform is using. It's not like your stuff is getting here with a big box or big container. It's like individual small packages. A lot of times it's just $1, $2, $3 value item. If you remember, I think in Trump's last term, he's criticized this universal postal union, UPU. Like they are take advantages of the US because at that time, if you mail something from China to US, it's even cheaper than you ship things in US domestically. So it's a huge advantage for the sellers in China. They can produce everything at very low cost, ship it at low cost. There is nobody can compete in the US domestically for those things. And that's the key element of why people can do that is this de minimis, because there's no tariff happening in that channel. But in a week or two, that de minimis will be canceled. Right now, I'm hearing people talking about it's either you pay the percentage of tariff by that category, or there's some minimum threshold per package. For example, some people saying that's $25. Some people saying the $50 or $75. I'm not quite sure. I'm hearing a lot of different numbers in the market, but we will see pretty soon that what's the actual cost. For example, if the per package cost or tariff is $50 at the minimum, I don't know, probably 80% of the business that's happening in all those e-commerce platforms will not exist. Like it just doesn't make sense, right? Are you willing to pay $50 for just $10 stuff? Then nobody is going to do that, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you for sharing. To summarize what Zoil just shared with all of us, what's different is number one, the percentage tariff is so much higher than before. Number two, it's at least some of the market perception it's universal. It's not just China, but even if you move your manufacturing facility to other places in Southeast Asia or Mexico, you still have to pay that tariff. And then number three is the de minimis $800 waiver limit. If you import in small packages through the postal system, you don't have to pay. Now, at least the expectation is set that sometime during the month of May, it may stop working.
That's what has been announced a long time ago. So everybody is expecting that to come. Yeah.
On that three different factors, which one do you think is the most damaging?
Of course, the de minimis. Yeah, tariff. If you think about tariff, even just 200% tariff, you can run a simple math, right? So if let's say you produce something, let's say it's an iPhone case in China. I don't know what's the cost. Probably let's say 50 cents USD dollar.
Yeah.
I don't know what's the actual cost. Let's just assume that's the number.
And you pay 200% tariff. That's $1. Okay, so the iPhone case you purchase price increased from $8 to $9. That sounds okay, right? That sounds okay, not that bad. So if you only look at this way, it probably won't change the landscape too much. But if I'm telling you every single package, I'm going to charge $50, you cannot do any business over there. It's just killing the entire e-commerce ecosystem. So this is how bad it is.
So do you mind sharing how you help to alleviate the increase of the costs in all these supply chain back then when you were hired? Because I remember it was a really bad situation as well, because we sell all these like $1, $2 things in the supply chain cost increase actually almost doubled the price of the items. So how did you use data science to model and what was your strategy?
Yeah, sure. So as I mentioned last time, the situation is not that bad because the minimus is still there. If you look at our transaction value, we have very, very little number of orders that exceed that threshold. Like what stuff you purchase online outside of the US that worth $800 or even more? Not too many things like that, right? So for majority of our transactions is actually not impacting. I think last time the major thing impact us is actually the shipping fee. As I mentioned, Trump adding a lot of pressure to this UPU, Universal Postal Union, saying that that's a little bit history here. So people will be interested to know why I mail something from China to US is even more cheaper than you ship something in the US domestically, right? That sounds right. How could that happen? There's a little bit history here. So for example, if you are living in an undeveloped country, let's say somewhere in Africa, there's a country that's the average income for a household is just $100 per year. Can you actually afford to mail a letter from that country to the US? Even if it just costs you $1, you cannot afford $1 to mail a letter. That's probably somebody's 1 month salary over there, right? So to make this communication all over the world available, for everyone can easily mail a letter, write a letter, mail it to anybody else in the world. So this UPU actually had this subsidized. So if you mail something from undeveloped country or developing country to developed country, so you don't need to pay the full price. The UPU actually subsidize that shipping to make a letter or mail available for everyone in the world. So that's how it started at the very beginning. And then you probably can connect the dots why the Western country is very interested to identify China as a developed country instead of developing country. Like you're wondering, what does it matter, right? It's a developing country or developed country. So what? So this matters. For specifically for this thing, if China was identified as a developed country, China will not have this subsidize. Actually, you even need to subsidize for the mail that's originated from undeveloped country. So actually, you are paying more, right? So that's the time when Trump putting a lot of pressure to the UPU system, say, hey, that's not fair for the US, okay? Then what actually happened is China Post multiple round of shipping fee increase at that time. To one way is like have this political pressure. Two is also give themselves a little bit more profit margin. So
it's a great problem to have. People asking you to charge more money.
Yeah, why not, right? And you have a very reasonable reason to do that. So we actually look at all those options. People are thinking, hey, maybe I should switch to other channel or other carrier. But when you look at the UPS, FedEx, all those commercial carriers, the price is way higher than China Post, way higher. So even China Post increased the shipping fee multiple rounds, 20%, 30%, 50%. It's still the lowest cost, best way to ship things to the US. So you just eat the cost. You just eat cost. Or you can pass this cost to the customer, which is not a lot. Like you can still sell a lot of things under $5 and ship it from China to US. That's doable. It probably will eat your margin up a little bit, but it's not the end of the day. The entire landscape is not changing too much. But that's actually a sign that a lot of manufacturers treat it as a sign that the free trade or like globalization is not going anywhere further. That's an early sign of seeing people are criticizing this free trade everywhere. That's when all the manufacturers start to think about invest in Southeast Asia, Thailand, Vietnam, Malaysia to build their own factory. That's how everything gets started. So to diverse the supply chain a little bit, I would say that's probably the biggest outcome from the past trade war. And people are thinking, as long as I diverse my supply chain to other countries, we could do the same. So what's happening is they build new factory in those countries, or the material is still from China. So they ship everything from China to those countries and put things together and sell it to the Western world. So supply chain is not about where do you manufacture it. Supply chain is about the ecosystem. So even if you build a manufacturer in the US, where can you get the material, right? You have Tesla, for example, you have Tesla manufacturer in the US. Where are you getting all those parts? Like majority of it is still from outside of the US. So that's the thing. Supply chain is not about factory. Supply chain is more about the entire ecosystem when you take that way. So the tariff is definitely break things apart, make the global supply chain put it in a danger. Then nobody can win. Even you bring the manufacturer ability back to the US, it's not going to help. You cannot steal, because if the manufacturer in the US need to pay 200% tariff to bring in the material to the US to produce, it doesn't work. So that's why last time is really easy to deal with, I would say. And of course, China and the US made multiple rounds of negotiation, and they made a deal over there. So it's the tension didn't go even higher over there. So that's how the situation went to stable at that time. But this time is definitely different.
So now if we were the head of a US-based e-commerce shop that has some supply chain or inventory that was importing from China, any suggestions, advices you can give them based on your experience in the past and what you're observing now?
So given the current situation, there's a lot of things are still hanging there, not finalized yet. I won't give some very concrete suggestions. So you should do that, you should do that, because we even don't know what the situation is going to be. But if you want me to guess, I would say the tariff level will not be that high. As Trump said, it cannot be at that level because that basically is killing everyone, even US companies. So it will be lower, just by how much or when, that's a story. So we'll see based on the attitude from other countries. A lot of countries just respond immediately. They are going to lower the tariff for US imported goods for their own country, showing they are more willing to negotiate with US about the tariff level. So even we say this round, Trump is adding a lot of
Tariff for all the countries?
It's probably still better if you have supply chain outside of China and in other countries. That probably will give you more room to play around. And if who knows, if China versus US, they are competing continue this trade war, and the tariff is sitting a higher level for longer time, then you definitely need supply chain from other countries. So I think right now is like, for a specific category, for a specific domain, do we really have alternatives in the market from other countries? I think that's the top one question you need to ask based on what category you are working on. We do see a lot of manufacturers that have already built the factory in other Southeast Asia countries, start to produce stuff, start to making things over there. If your product fits in those categories, definitely that's probably immediate alternative. You can take action, you can move. But to a larger scale, there's a lot of things, there's nothing you can replace in the market. Then you need to think about this thing in another way, which I would say,
For example, I always use this.
as an example. Like we have 300 and 400 million people in the US, right? All those 400 million people say, hey, starting from tomorrow, I'm not going to buy a single clothes. I just wear old clothes until everything worn out and I'll be naked. No purchase clothes at all. Yeah, then that's the end of the world. That's the end of the story. No matter what you do, the business is not coming back. But obviously that's not happening, right? These 400 million people still need to buy clothes, no matter what's the price, because I need it. Or food, I need to buy food, right? Or car, I need to buy car. Of course, because of tariff, the price will be different or maybe higher, the demand will be hurt. But there's still a huge demand given the number of populations here. So pretty soon there will be a new balance, even with tariff or without tariff, or in China or with, outside China, it will be a new balance. I think everybody needs to think about this. What's my position in this new balance? Where am I? Am I still in the plate? I'm still playing in this game, or I'm completely out, right? So for example, if you are talking about the Nike shoes, today is $200. With tariff, they have to sell it at $400 versus another shoe, white brand, sell it at $50. With tariff, you probably will sell at $100. Now you are comparing with 100 white brand, white label shoe with the 400 Nike shoes. So the Nike shoes will have a disadvantage over there because of the original price is too high. So try to make yourself as close as to the bucket that's impact less by the tariff. That's probably the strategy a lot of companies need to do. If you cannot get rid of it, if you have to stay in this game, I believe that's a segment everybody want to think about and explore. It's never too late because the demand is still there. You think about that. People still need to buy stuff. It's just buy your stuff or somebody else's stuff, buy a $200 stuff or buy $100 stuff. So try to put yourself, like, stay there, stay in the game before this new balance formed. Every time crisis is also opportunity. Yeah, who knows if, right, this is tariff will actually may create several other big e-commerce company who actually can survive in the new environment. Who knows? So unfortunately, there's no silver bullet to this. Oh, because I do this, I don't need to pay tariff. That's not happening. But you can always find ways to be very competitive in this new balance, new environment, new ecosystem, and still thrive as a business. So that's what I feel it will happen.
Yeah, I just want to add on. So last time when the supply chain cost increased, so we actually did a lot back at Wish. So I'll just summarize a few things people can do immediately. One is because the cost per package increased a lot, so you do want to increase the average order value as much as possible. So even now we see the same thing happen on Shein and Temu, which is they increased the minimum free shipping threshold. Mm-hmm. Two, if you price your items in a way that when people buy in bundles, they feel, oh, the price didn't really increase that much. Because once you hit that bar, it's no longer that bad for the sellers. So they calculate a good AOV that can offset all these price increase enough that's still a sustainable business to your situations. And three, I think the most important thing is user retention is more important than people, because now the user acquisition cost becomes so expensive after the supply chain cost increase. So a lot of merchants, instead of relying on, all these channels, all these platforms help me to get customers and also targeting competition centers like Amazon, they try to always slip a card in all these packages and say, please order directly from my site. If they can save that 20% platform fee and the user acquisition fee, sometimes even higher than 20%, they can use that to offset all these additional costs that Zoil was mentioned. So just want to say some of the playbooks that we did back at Wish to use marketing and product to kind of offset a little bit of, exactly to your point, the outside world that we cannot change, or we couldn't really predict how bad or how good it can become.
Totally. I think that's all good
suggestions to do at this
situation to lower your costs as much as possible, because you are going to pay tariff as an additional cost introduced here. So what are those costs you can save before you pay the tariff? That becomes very important. I think all the combinations definitely take a big part of it. If you think about this tariff, the way of charging tariff is per order, right? What I just mentioned, either it's $25 per order or $50 per order. That's a fixed amount. Then the more item you can put in a package, the less tariff you will pay in average to those specific unit. You will definitely get a better result for yourself. But I also believe you cannot put too much stuff in one package, because then you start to pay tariff on the percentage side, like this. Nobody is 145% or 125%. You don't want to have too high value stuff over there, then you actually ending paying more. So there's a perfect value. You should you should put things together to minimize the cost that could incur. That would be a mass game. Everybody should play a little bit by themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Jim, what is your take on this from all these amazing suggestions that Zoil just gave us?
I'm trying to put different pieces of information together. I guess the main lesson that I'm learning is like it's a very highly dynamic environment. There is no perfect information out there. There is no perfect solution out there. If you can afford to stay in the game, maybe who knows? Like Zoil was saying, if you stay in the game long enough and then outlive all your competitors, once things go to the new balance, you'll benefit from it. And that's maybe the silver bullet out of that's the silver lining out of this round of chaos. On the other hand, I do want to sort of point out, because of the uncertainty on all the other ecosystem players, like how USPS is going to respond, how UPS is going to play a role into how the customs officer is going to evaluate. And then Frost, you were saying earlier, have a paper slip in your package for your Amazon ship. I personally have heard a few cases of people got their account suspended from Amazon because that's almost like, from Amazon's perspective, whether it's justified or not. It's stealing their customers.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a risk people only start taking because now they have to have that 20% extra cost. Otherwise, they may not be able to stay in the game. So totally agree. It's a risky choice.
Zoil, any other ecosystem players that we can sort of explore around or look into to see if there is anything that we can do? The whole supply chain, the whole supplier ecosystem, or anything that an average e-commerce or direct-to-consumer shop that is dealing with that can be looked again?
It depends on where are you in the supply chain. I know a lot of interesting things people did. For example, there are actually a lot of Chinese business owners came to the U.S. to build a factory here, as Trump wished, build stuff here, but only to a certain degree, to certain product. For example, recently it's very popular, they call it the POD, P-O-D. So basically, you print a logo on T-shirt and sell the T-shirt. So what you need is just a machine and blank T-shirt, right? And that's it. So it's very easy to get all those things. Even you bring the machine from China, that's fine. It's a one-time machine. And T-shirt, you can buy T-shirt from anywhere outside the US. In the US, probably very difficult, but outside the US, you can get it. You pay some tariff or whatever you need to pay, and then you start to print the logo in the US and sell it at a pretty high margin, because the customized product actually has a better product profit margin over there. People don't really care it's a $5 or $8. People care this is a stylish stuff, and most of the time is have good memories of it, or just a gift for someone. So the margin is higher. I think that's a perfect example to see how you can, build the manufacturer ability in the US to compete in this environment, right? And all those manufacturers who build the factory in Southeast Asia, Mexico, right now, Mexico is in a better position, because if you look at the rule Trump rolled out, because US has a deal with Canada and Mexico, so the actual tariff is way lower than other countries, but who knows? It might change. So if you decide to move your manufacturer to other places, just think about it. Think about where, Mexico right now seems like a winner. It's close to the US. The shipping fee is less, right? And it's lower tariff, but it's probably far away from the source of the materials. So you have both good and bad for doing that. And the rest of the thing is just to, as Frost mentioned, serve your customer well. As at the end of the day, every business is about the customer, right? If your customer still feel it brings value. For example, I heard a lot of interesting things, like people are posting saying that because they are producing a specific product in certain category, even with 200 tariff, the client is saying, just keep on producing. We will buy whatever you produce at any percentage of tariff because there's nothing we can find in the US or in other countries. So just go, right? So if you are in that position, then yeah, sure, there's you are risk-free from the tariff because that's a strong demand over there. Your customer needs you. Then you don't need to worry too much about that. And if you are just selling some commodity, like for example, Shein, right? The fast fashion, everybody is selling fast fashion. Then if you are just a small seller over there, that's probably you will be in trouble because you don't have your own customer. You don't have a good relationship already built with your own customers. You are relying on some big platforms. You don't have the own ability to produce things, to even move things around. You don't have a strong position to even to combine shipping because you don't have a large enough customer scale. Then that's definitely in trouble. And I would say not everyone can be safe in this environment. The landscape and the ecosystem will change. Unfortunately, many small players probably will be out in the situation. But whoever invested early have the ability to diverse, have the ability to move things around, have the best relationship with the customers, has the highest loyalty of the customers, will survive in this game. Yeah.
Great. Thank you for sharing. To summarize, as a summary, I think you mentioned, Mexico could be a good place, knowing what we know today, and then things could change. But I think what's more strategically important to me is like look at the whole supply chain and find out if there is a good high margin value adding steps that you can bring in the US, and then let all the earlier steps, like we can still import and then pay the tariffs if we have to, if you have a high margin add up on top, and you can actually manufacture or some of the steps in the US to still make it a little bit more viable than just import the whole thing.
Yeah. I also want to add one point, because what we have already discussed is how to deal with, how to resolve some problem we are facing from this tariff war. But as far as I can see, a lot of people are choose in a different way. They're giving up the US market. That's also a big portion of the things happening right now. Because if you look at the China versus US, the business between China and US, the first round of tariff war, US export is around 30% of China's total export. As of today, 15%, right? This number can be further lower. If it's just 10% or even lower than 10%, that's not even important for China anymore. And I'm pretty sure the Chinese government will do a lot of work to expand the relationship. As you can see, President Xi is already visiting Vietnam, all those countries already, right? So the government will spend a lot of effort to explore the relationship with a country outside of the US, not the traditional West country, but also, for example, Middle West, Southeast, even Africa. You will see this pie actually will grow rest of the world in the next few years, and maybe ride on those waves is a better way or better opportunity than stay in this game with US or with all those uncertainties, high risk stuff, right? So, and I actually see many sellers or manufacturers are taking that route. They spend more effort to develop new client in the rest of the world and trying to sell more over there to compensate the loss from the US customers. Don't remember that's also an option for a lot of players.
Yeah, I already saw, for example, to Zoil's point, like Temu and Shein, they cut off the US marketing spending on Meta ads, but they are still running ads in European countries. As a solid example.
Exactly. Yeah. Because Shein and Temu probably will be impacted most because of this tariff war. So they definitely need to think about the strategies, how to deal with this. You see TikTok actually start to doing e-commerce shop in Europe 1 month ago. So they are also diverse the business outside of the US. So a lot of people are doing that. And that's also, because you don't know what will happen. Right now, it's like the US is the biggest consumer market in the world. But in 5 years, 10 years, who knows? Maybe US still a very big market, but maybe Europe and Southeast Asia or even Middle East can be a big market as well. So just explore, keep on doing things correctly and be diverse. Unfortunately, that's something everybody need to think about.
Very well said. Thank you so much, Zoil. And I think we will know a lot more, maybe in a month or two, how it plays out, and it will be interesting to look back like what we share
Exactly.
today
Yeah.
and see how it works. Yeah, Jun, do you have
Exactly.
anything else you want to add on?
Yeah, like Zoil was saying, we're truly living in the history right now, and then
Yes.
hopefully the history will play itself out in a few months, and we'll observe and see. Thank you, Zoil, for sharing.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks
Next
for having me.
time.
It's my honor to be here today to have a discussion with you guys. Yeah,
Thank you
it's
so
a
much.
it's a it's a nice conversation, and hopefully that's a little bit helpful for a lot of people. I don't know how much helpful it could be because I don't have a solution for everyone. But yeah, that's what's happening. Everyone need to be very flexible right now.
Absolutely. Well, thank you.
Thank you,
All
Zoil.
right, thank you. Bye bye.